Here it is. No, sorry, we couldn't open this presentation because we ran into a problem. Please try again. Great.
Do you want to use the one I've got on screen now? I can just flick through.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, no problem. Where are you here? Great. Okay.
So it's like
Good.
presentations.
Okay, so in this presentation, next slide, please, Tom.
Yeah.
We'll have a look, as I said, in the details of the grant procedure and the post-grant procedures. Next one, please, Tom. So let's start by the basics. Where do we file? We've seen that you can access APO via different routes, but you always need to file an application at APO. So you can either file it directly at APO, at a national patent office, or via the PCT route, as we saw. Can be filed by post, by online services, which is highly recommended, but neither by fax, nor per hand, nor by email. And I don't know if all of you are conversant with the terms divisional. Divisionals can only be filed directly at APO. What is a divisional? It's an application which stems directly from a previous application by the same applicant and just takes out, focuses on a specific part of that and bears the same priority date. And that's why it's called division. You can have then several generation divisionals, and these can only be filed at the APO. Next one, Tom, please. Date of filing is the date in which you file the patent application. That's clear. The name is self-explanatory. However, what do you need to receive an official filing date? You need to file by the APO an indication that you wish to have a patent granted, information identifying the applicant and allowing the applicant to be contacted, and a description or a reference to a previously filed application. Those of you, suppose all of you who are acquainted with what a patent looks like, might see that something appears to be missing in this list. This list is the official list to get a filing date. Filing date is crucial for several things, defining which state of the art is relevant, priority claim, and so forth. But we've seen in the previous list something might appear to have been missing, and that is the claims. Claims are an essential part of the patent. But to get and obtain a filing date, you do not need the claims. Claims must be filed a little later, within 2 months. Why can this be important? In a university, in a research, scientific context, you may have a researcher comes to you and says, I want to file a patent application. These are my researchers. Tomorrow I have to, or in 2 days, I have to publish them. And you, for some reason, you don't have time to define more. You may. We don't advise to do that, but it may be an emergency measure. You can file a description. You can take the paper, the first part of the scientific paper, and use that as a description. Then you ask for a patent, and you give the name of the applicant. That's all you need. Claims can come later. We discourage people from doing that, because then the claim need to be perfectly in line with what you filed. We'll see this. So date of filing is essential. Language can be any of the 3 official languages, of course, but you can also have an admissible language from the APO. Tom, could you take out the automatic, or could you go back to the slide,
yes,
please?
It wasn't me. I thought you were taking over control.
No.
I don't know whether
not at all.
I didn't intentionally make it do this. So
No, I know it's an automatic feature, which I was confronted with in another presentation. Okay, so languages can be one of the 3 official languages, any other language, but then you have to provide a translation. If you file in an admissible non-APO language, you might have the right to a fee reduction if you are a small and medium enterprise or individual or university. We need to define exactly what the application's originally filed is. Why? Because you are limited in the possibility of amending your application. In the course of the examination, you'll see one of the reactions of a patent applicant is to file amendments. And these amendments are strictly confined within the boundaries of the content of the original file application. That's why I was saying you might file your claims 2 months later, within 2 months after having filed your documents. But those claims will need to be perfectly within the boundaries of the description you have provided beforehand. That's the point. Next slide, please, Tom. So to get the filing date is one thing. To have a complete patent application is a different story, and you do need claims, you need drawings. If you have referred to drawings, you need an abstract. And you need, of course, to pay fees, filing and search fee. Next one, Tom, please. By the way, every now and then I'm looking whether my presentation is being uploaded, but the system still has major problems. Sorry about that. Okay, and many thanks for mentioning that you had time to do some office work. That's very positive thinking, very encouraging. Thank you very much. And file constitution, so the receiving section, as we call it, will finalize the file, which will have a description, claims, drawings, whenever, an abstract. And what happens with this file? Next one, Tom, please. It's sent to the search division. The filing phase is over. We see it here, and we move on to the search phase. Next one, please, Tom. Search, you all know what this means identify documents which may be relevant for the examination of the patent application and for the eventual grant of the patent. So we look for the state of the art, and the search phase also provides a preliminary opinion on patentability. The search examiner and the TPO, their two colleagues, will provide a first opinion based on the document the search has retrieved. Where do examiners look? Well, Arthur will tell you more, but we have internal, external sources. Any document may be part of the state of the art. And Arthur will tell you more about the state of the art and what this exactly means. And of course, especially in certain fields, non-patent literature plays a major role. As I said, I'm a chemist, or perhaps I should say I was a chemist before joining the office, or if you, after 30 years at the office, 35, I'm not sure if I'm still a chemist, but when as an examiner, of course, at least 50% of my citations of prior art were non-patent literature. I was working in applied biotech, and that's a domain where non-patent literature plays a major role. Sorry, Tom, next one. I just said at least 50% of my citations. What did I mean by that? This, you see it in this slide. This is an example of a search report. Search report is a list of documents which a search examiner considers relevant for the examination of the patent application. They have attributed different codes. X is a document very relevant on its own. Y needs to be combined to attack or object against inventive step. A is just background. And alongside with the list of documents, we provide the preliminary opinion on patentability. Next one, please, Tom. After something like 18 months after the first filing, the patent application goes public. And this is what we call an A publication. And the content of the patent application becomes part of the state of the art. It triggers what we call provisional protection. So once you have published your patent application, you can start, how should I say, pestering or informing potential competitors that you have something that you might then attack them legally. But as the name says, it's a provisional protection. You will need the finally granted patent to be able to really enforce your patent and attack them in court, alleging infringement. And it also triggers an important step for third parties to provide observations. Once the patent application goes public, anyone can send information to the APO saying, oh, I have some information you didn't appear to find in the search report. The name is not completely correct. Third parties are not party to the proceedings. They submit observations, but the APO always takes this information into account. Next one, please, Tom. So we see here, A is a journal published application. If it's published together with the search report, it's A1. If no search report is yet available, it's an A2. And when the search report gets published, that's an A3. The opinion is publicly available. It's not published, but you have it on the server. Next one, please, Tom. And once the search report is out, the search phase is, of course, over. Next one, please, Tom. And starts a new phase, substantive examination, which is the one leading to the grant of a patent, usually. They also lead to a refusal or to a withdrawal. We'll see this in a moment. And for historical reason, a TPO search and examination phase are separated, which is a bit unusual, which means that the applicant may request upfront to have examination, so it goes from search to examination in a seamless way, but can also wait for the results of the search report to come in and then say, well, do I really want to pursue this in view of this very relevant prior art? And they might withdraw. In any case, if they have not paid the examination fee upfront, they have 6 months to request examination and pay the examination fee. During examination phase, I already mentioned there's an exchange between examiners and applicants, except in the rare case where the application is ready for grant as soon as it enters the examination phase, in which case we have what we call a direct grant. Otherwise, there's an exchange, examiners, applicants provide arguments or submit amendments. Importantly, at TPO, we cannot issue a decision going against the applicant unless the applicant has been informed of the reasons and has been given a chance to be heard. And they have the right, applicants have an absolute right to request oral hearings, oral proceedings, if a negative decision is contemplated. This is not always the case. I was visiting Japan with a delegation of examiners in my directorate, and the Japanese applicant said, we really appreciate a lot the EPO system because in Japan, we can get a refusal without having been given the opportunity of defending our point of view directly in an oral hearing. And so they were really praising the EPO system. Okay, next one, Tom. I wanted to press, but patent so to get to grant, of course, a patent application and the invention need to meet all the requirements of the European Patent Convention, EPC. And so the invention needs to meet the patentability requirement, must be new, must involve an inventive step, must be industrially applicable, and it's not excluded from patentability. And the application needs to fulfill some requirements. Everything must be, the claims must clearly define the subject matter for which a protection is sought. The invention must be sufficiently disclosed so as to allow other parties to reproduce it and build on it and further innovate. And each application must relate to one or a single group of inventions. if there are more inventions in one application, the examiners will raise a non-nullity objection. But now let's focus on you will hear more about the patentability requirements in what Arthur will be telling you in a moment. Tom, next one, please. As I said, one of the reasons I see, and we see one of the strengths of the APO, is the fact that 3 people decide about whether to grant a patent or not. So the exam divisions consists of 3 members. Its decision is the responsibility of its decision is made by the entire division, where each examiner has 1 vote. And we call this examination as an ex parte procedure, which means there's only the applicant involved in the office. As I said, third parties may submit observations, but they are not party to the proceedings. They can submit observations. I said the APO always takes them into account. What does that mean? It does not mean that we agree necessarily with them, but we consider them, and we may change a course of examination in view of a relevant prior art we were not aware of, or we may simply say thank you, but it doesn't add anything to what we already had. And in some areas, third parties are particularly important. When I was in the patent granting process, Director General, we often were confronted I was responsible also for a unit of biopharma, and we were relatively often confronted with traditional knowledge related issues. So inventions which allegedly were based on knowledge which some populations, some people already have. And one of the means I always highlighted, they had to make us aware of that. Often traditional knowledge is not immediately available, was exactly third parties' observation. And once giving a presentation, I was said, oh, but you granted, not me, but you, APO granted a patent on this nut, extract of the nut. It was had been known for years. And I'm sorry, we didn't know about it. If you had known, you should have told us. Provided the observation, we will certainly consider that. And indeed, in several cases, we changed the course of the proceedings. Good. Next one, please, Tom. So what happens if everything is okay, requirements are met, the patent applicant provides translation of the claims into other APO official languages, pays some fees, and the grant becomes final. Or, Tom, next part of the slide, please. The requirements are not met. The examining division refuses the patent application. This can be appealed, as we saw, or the applicant themselves say, no, we were no longer interested, maybe for the various reasons. I remember as a young examiner, I just joined the substantive examination Director General. In those days, they were separated from search. And I was very proud. I had done a thorough work. I had granted a patent. I had indicated why it wasn't inventive. There was even an article in a major scientific journal. I was really pleased. I felt very happy. And what happened with that grant? The applicant withdrew. I said, gosh, it's not possible. And so I learned, let's say the hard way, so to speak, that withdrawal is not only due to, oh, I found an excellent document, they will leave. Patents are an asset. And if there's no commercial interest, if a company says, well, I don't want to invest any money, not even a penny or a cent on that invention, they withdraw, even if they are a patent. As I said, once a patent is granted, there are some post-grant procedures which start, and namely the opposition period begins. Opposition period lasts 9 months. And once the patent goes national, the administration, the legal issues are transferred to the national courts. And once the opposition period is over, all the opposition proceedings are terminated, the patent is entirely competence of national courts, or as we saw, of the Unitary Patent Court. Next one, please, Tom. patents get published, there are the B publication, and the publication triggers the moment in which you can really enforce your patent. It's a legally valid document, and you can go with the patent and start informing your potential competitors or your competitors that they should stop, cease and desist from what they're doing or whatever you intend to do. And as I said, it also triggers the period for opposition. Next one, please, Tom. And this concludes the grant procedure. One thing needs to be said. We speak about publication. It may come to no surprise to you that the APO does not publish anything in paper anymore. So everything is published electronically. Good. Next one, please. Post-grant procedure, we'll go quite quickly on that. Sorry, I don't know if you hear noise, someone is drilling. So first, main post-grant proceedings, the APO is in charge of its opposition. Who can file an opposition? Well, everybody, within 9 months. It's an inter partes procedures, which means there are two parties involved besides the APO, the opponent or the opponents, and the patent proprietor. There's no limitation to the opponents' numbers. In my previous area, we had oppositions up to 18 parties. And now, I mean, the CRISP procedure also involved a number of parties and a number of commercial interests, of course. The opposition proceedings are independent of the examination proceedings. The parties can come up with new prior art, and it's independent of the examination procedure, even though one of the examiners that was part of the examination proceedings can be part of the opposition division. However, next one, please. However, that examiner that was already in the examination proceeding can never be the chairperson in the opposition division. But usually now we try to have an opposition division which is completely different from the examining division. This shows graphically the timeline. 9 months for the opposition. 9 months nowadays might seem a lot indeed, but the European Patent Convention was written in 1973, which is 52 years ago. And in those days, paper was, let's say, leading over digital, and 9 months was enough time to find the paper copies, the paper documents, and so forth. And okay, the outcome of the opposition may be maintenance of the patent as granted, rejection of which is rejection of the position. The patent may be maintained with amendments or may be revoked. And as I said, the party adversely affected by this decision may, the opposition within 9 months from the granting of the patent, from the moment in which the patent is published, the publication of the grant. Next one, please. Which are the grounds of opposition? You need to have the APC clearly defines what is a ground of opposition and what is not. So grounds of opposition are the invention does not meet the patentability requirements, so it's not novel, it's not inventive. It's excluded, the subject matter is excluded from patentability, or it's not an invention. Arthur will tell you more about that. I'm sorry, I have the impression I'm kind of shoving all the workload on Arthur's shoulders, but I'm sure he's happy of doing that. Lack of disclosure of the invention, that's a very important requirement, especially in some areas like biotech, biopharma. Or what we spoke about earlier about amendments. If a granted patent is considered to go beyond the disclosure of the application as originally filed, that's a very sound ground of opposition. Next one, please. Oh, by the way, you don't need, all questions are very, very welcome, and there's no need to apologize. So just feel free to ask questions it really makes the presentation more lively. So as I said, opposition division, 3 members. Again, each decision is the responsibility of the division as a whole. Next one, please. Just to add an information to make life a little more complicated, if you need my help on that topic, is that the division, exam division, opposition division are 3 members, unless there are difficult questions that have been raised. Could be a difficult priority claim, considering bad, and in which case the examining opposition division will call in a legal expert. At that point, we will have a division with 4 members. Especially if there's witnesses called in, then we have the intervention of a legal expert. At that point, the division is made up by 4 members, and the chairperson of the division has a casting vote. Okay, limitation procedure. We've seen oppositions triggered by other parties, limitation and revocation are triggered by the patent proprietor themselves. So limitation means the patent proprietor decides, for whichever reason, usually licensing reasons or commercial reasons, whatever, to shrink, to get a narrower protection from their patent. They can file it at any time for the entire life of the patent, and it's the APO that deals with it. And the patent is limited ab initio. It means that the patent, the limited scope of the patent will be applied from the very inception of the patent protection period, i.e. from the patent publication. And I was confronted just a few months ago with the length of this limitation procedure, because I was contacted by a formality officer saying, "Dear Enrico, we received a limitation procedure request. Please let us know if the examining division is the same or you want to change it." And I've been absent from the patent granting process Directorate General for 7 years now. So the formality officer still had my name as a director of the unit and in charge of the limitation procedure. So just this showed me concretely, hands-on, that the limitation procedure is indeed a competence of the APO for the entire life of the patent. Next one, please, Tom. Revocation, I need not to tell you what the final effect of this procedure is. Again, it's a patent proprietor that requests a revocation anytime, effect ab initio. Revocation is relatively easy. Limitation needs nonetheless a check of what has been of the limitation. Why? Again, in live setting, I would ask you, we discuss, but I'll give you a few seconds to think about it, because we need to be sure that the limitation does not add a subject matter that goes over and beyond the subject matter of the application as originally filed. Revocation has no such problem. Next one, please, Tom. As I said, any decision can be appealed by the adversely affected party. And who deals with these appeals? Well, unsurprisingly, the boards of appeal. They are the second instance. They are akin to judges. They are made up, the technical boards of appeal comprise former examiners or people, experts with a technical background. We also have legal experts in the boards of appeal, of course. And we can have legal boards of appeal entirely made of legal experts, or technical boards of appeal where one legal component may be there, and give independent final rulings on the appeals. And of course, they can do anything that the first instance could have done. But usually the boards of appeal want to have a decision made by the first instance on all issues. Example, there's an appeal because the patent was considered to be not novel. The boards of appeal says, well, it is novel, but since you did not discuss inventive step, I will send it back to you, examination division. You'll check inventive step, and then once you make a decision, we'll deal with it. So they could theoretically examine inventive step and do away, but often the boards follow the approach. The parties have the right to a double instance procedure. Okay, next one, please, Tom. As in all countries, most of countries and all jurisdictions, there's a Supreme Court at the EPO as well, and that's a large border appeal. And large border appeal can be called in either by the president, who has spotted discrepancies in the decisions of the Board of Appeal on major issues, and President thinks we need to have a clear indication as to where to go, or by a Board of Appeal which is confronted with some issues and refers some questions to the Board of Appeal. Recently, I mean, the last major changes in the EPC, it was also introduced the right for petition for review, which is when one of the parties involved in appeal proceedings considered that there was a major substantial procedure violation by the Boards of Appeal. The petition for review are relatively rare, quite expensive, just to discourage people to really make them resort to this measure in very, very relevant cases. Okay, next one. Please, Tom. Oh, ain't that nice? We completed the graph. That's good. So we came to the end of the procedure. And as you see from this graph, now we better understand it. The blue arrow from refusal goes to appeal proceedings. The grant can lead to opposition, which can lead to appeal, but also refusal can lead to appeal. Next one, please, Tom. This slide, I prepared this slide a while ago. I mean, because often I receive the question, what are the percentages? These are statistics from a couple of years ago, but I think more or less we are in the same range. So out of 100 applications by the EPO, 15 are withdrawn by the applicant themselves. In the initial phases, 25 are withdrawn during examination. A minor part is refused, and about 3% are opposed, and then half of that is further appealed. Next one, please, Tom, which I think is usually the slide that people appreciate the most in my presentations when it's over. So here we have the conclusions. We saw what we see. We saw the different grant phases and the post-grant procedures. I hope it was clear, but I'm very happy if you have any questions. I'll try with the good help of my friends to answer any questions. Thank you very much. And thank you, Tom, for the technical support. It's still there, running in circles. Okay, good. Any questions, comments, sharing of experience? Don't hesitate to switch on your mic, add the chat.
Just silence. You've either given them all the information they need or just
No, there's a question. Slide 43 withdrawn includes also deemed to be withdrawn. No. A very, very good question. You're quite acquainted with. Did you have any experience of deemed to be withdrawn? Deemed to be withdrawn is a communication the EPO sends. So the application is deemed to be withdrawn, but there's still a chance for the applicant to remedy. If the application is withdrawn, it's withdrawn. Deemed to be withdrawn is what we consider as a result of the action of a non-action of the applicant. That's when we say, oh, it's deemed to be withdrawn. And that's more akin to if it's deemed to be withdrawn. So they don't fall, as I said, within that statistics. Withdrawn is really when the applicant says, I withdraw, with final result. So indeed, the deemed to be withdrawn might be then the end result. Once it's final, is withdrawn. But there's still a door open. Does it answer your question? I don't know if Arthur you want, or Tom, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, it turns out that many applications are deemed to be draw and then they resurrect because it's a matter of paying fees or yeah. So many applications are deemed to withdraw, deemed to be withdraw, and then in the end
They
the
come
issues
back.
are yeah, they come back. Yeah.
Yeah, it's also something you can do from this from the tech transfer side. If you've got academics who are still doing more research, you just try and sort of buy yourself as much time. Just sort of you end up waiting until the last possible second.
Indeed. Any other question? Perhaps I know. I leave it up to you, Tom. Do you want to have a 5-minute break before
I was thinking maybe
Arthur?
people need a quick coffee break. Is that okay from your side, Arthur, as well?
Because Arthur presentation lasts, what is it, three
Yeah,
and a
yeah,
half
no
hours? No,
problem.
it's
We
3.5 hours or
definitely
4. I can't remember,
no,
Arthur. Okay.
no, not at all. But yeah, if you want to do a 5-minute break, is no issue.
Take a 5 minute. So if we aim to then start at 5:02, so it gives you sort of 6 minutes of break and 30 seconds to get
Perfect.
back to your computer again.
And again, my apologies for the technical glitch. It's still there. So, but thanks, Tom, for
You'll still
remedying.
be waiting for a presentation to load.
No, indeed. It was
Okay,
my attempt
super.
not to do my work, but I
And by
was
the way,
for.
can you see my presentation already?
Yes,
And,
Yes,
yes,
okay.
we see the
super.
slide. Perfect.
Awesome.
Okay, super. So we'll
Great.
start at 5 minutes to the hour. So yeah, quick coffee break for everyone. See, the clock is ticking. Sure, they're going to start exactly on time, Martha. I'm not sure how long your presentation is in terms of your own comfort. Leave it. Otherwise, it just goes into people's lunch break, of course.
Yes, I think it's best we don't go into people's lunch break. So yeah, better we get started.
There's nothing worse than a hungry audience.
Exactly. Yeah.
Super. So, okay, so over to you, Arthur. The floor is yours.
Okay, so yeah, welcome everybody. Welcome to this presentation. My name is Arthur Freitas. The slide says here I'm the owner, but I don't own the EPO. I'm an examiner. I'm at most the owner of this presentation. So yeah, I'm an examiner here at the European Patent Office. I have been working here since 2016, and I examine patents in the fields of microprocessors architecture. And prior to that, I worked over a decade in the industry. I was an engineering manager for a major semiconductor company, microelectronics company. I was also involved in intellectual property as an inventor, but also as a member of a patent committee. So we would receive innovation disclosures from engineers and decide whether or not we would file for patents, or we would keep secret, or file a defensive publication. All right, today's presentation is about the requirements, patentability requirements for applications under the European Patent Convention. So we're going to be talking about patents and inventions, what's patented, what's not, what are the exceptions to patentability. Then we're going to move on into novelty and inventive step, which are crucial patentability requirements under the EPC. We're going to talk about them in quite depth. We're going to show you concepts, and we're going to work together some practical examples. So without further ado, let's talk about patents and inventions. So part 2 of the European Patent Convention discusses substantive patent law. And Articles 52 to Article 257 are the so-called patentability requirements. And Article 52.1 says that European patents shall be granted for any inventions in all fields of technology, provided that they are new, involve an inventive step, and are susceptible to industrial application. So let's unpack. We're talking about any inventions broadly, but we're limiting to fields of technology. So there must be some technology behind that. There needs to be something technical. And then we introduced 3 requirements. Inventions need to be new, that is, never disclosed before, novel. They need to be inventive, that is, they should not be an obvious modification of what's out there. And they need to be industrially applicable. What does that mean? Yeah, something that you can manufacture, you can industrialize, just at least reproduce. Okay, so if you're a rocket scientist, you can file lots of patents, right? Rocket science is all about technology, lots of complex inventions. But what if your invention is simple, right? Imagine you are a mechanical engineer working for a small company, or you're a technician working at a workshop and you just figure out an improvement to your work. Can you file for a patent? And the answer is yes. As long as your invention is technical, you can file for a patent. And as a matter of fact, simple inventions have great impacts on people's lives. And that's really the case here for 3M's Post-it, right? It was a simple invention that revolutionized how people took notes back in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, even today, even if we're moving out of paper nowadays. And it started as a simple technology, a low-tech adhesive, lightly sticky, removable, reusable. You wouldn't find any major application until the early mid-70s when Art Fry, an inventor in 3M, realized that he could use the technology for a repositionable note. So they developed this product, launched the product in 1980, and then by 1998, they had over $1 billion in revenues alone from Post-it. So Post-it was considered one of the 3M's major brands, most valuable assets. So it goes to show you don't need to be a rocket scientist to file for patents. As a matter of fact, simple inventions can be very profitable too. So now back to Article 52.1, the EPC doesn't really say what an invention is, but there's no explicit definition of the invention, but it says it needs to be something technical. Remember, fields of technology. Case law is also quite explicit when it says that an invention should provide a technical solution to a technical problem. we as examiners, we always asking ourselves, what's the technical problem being solved by an invention? We're going to talk about that when we discuss inventive step. So inventions need to be always technical. Okay, if Article 52.1 does not show what an invention is, Article 52.2 say what an invention is not. As a matter of fact, sometimes we say that the EPC defines inventions in negative terms by essentially saying what shall not be regarded as an invention. So Article 52.2 says that shall not be regarded as an invention, discoveries, scientific theories, and mathematical methods. Why so? Well, those are laws of nature and mental tools. You cannot own them. So if you're Isaac Newton and you discover the gravity and you come up with a formula for gravity, you cannot file for a patent for that, right? That's laws of physics. You cannot own them. We're all subject to that. And then we have aesthetic creations, right? Also shall not be regarded as an invention. And don't get me wrong, aesthetic creations are extremely important, and you should definitely pursue intellectual property protection for those. People are willing to pay big bucks for looks. Look at the iPhone, the minimalistic look of an iPhone or a Porsche or Ferrari. But those are not considered to be technical inventions, right? So you can file other types of IP protections for those. You can register a design. If it's a logo, you can file for a trademark. But since they're not technical, you cannot file for a patent. So aesthetic creations are not considered to be an invention. Then we have schemes, rules, and methods for performing mental acts, playing games, or doing business, and programs for computers. So if your invention is about, let's say, a user retention algorithm for a slot machine that you have installed in Las Vegas, right, in a casino, you cannot get a patent for that. Same goes for if your invention is, if your innovation is about an algorithm that would look at your purchase history on Amazon and then would recommend you a next product, right? So that would also not be considered an invention, right? Because it's a business method. And programs from computers as such. Here, I'd like to open a parenthesis. There is this myth that here at the European Patent Office, we don't grant patents for software inventions. And that's really a myth, right? As a matter of fact, if your program, if your software is solving a technical problem, it's operating on technical data, and it's really solving a technical problem, you can file for a patent. I'll show you examples in the next slide. And finally, presentations of information. And again, everything here is as such. Okay, so a computer program allowing the identification of prime numbers. Is that something technical? And the answer here, not really, right? We have a computer program as such, and essentially is operating on abstract data. In this case, mathematical data. You get a number, you type a number, and the program will tell you, is it a prime number or not? That's not considered to be technical. Thus, it will be excluded for patentability. On the other hand, if you have a computer program for reducing processor power consumption, let's say by dynamically adjusting clock frequency based on real-time workload. So imagine you have a program running on your computer that detects whether or not you're really needing that computing power. Say you're just editing a PowerPoint presentation or reading email, the program realizes you don't need so much power. So what it does, slows down. And the user won't notice, right? Lowers down the clock frequency. What kind of technical problem we're solving here? We're conserving power in the computer. We're reducing power consumption. And that's something technical. So here's an example of a computer implemented invention, a software invention that you could get a patent for. Then let's say a method for presenting information based on an algorithm that would provide a visually attractive four-color design. Here again, we're presenting information, four-color design, something subjective. This is not considered to be an invention, right? It's excluded for patentability. On the other hand, if you would have a method of displaying alarm signals in an aircraft cockpit, where the arrangement of the display would reduce pilot reaction, prevent overload, then we might have a technical invention, right? Because we are solving a technical problem here, which is man-machine interaction, right? How you actually prove that. Imagine you have something wrong in your airplane. Instead of having to click over hidden menus or flipping a manual, you get something presented to you, it can react immediately. Or depending on technical features you would have there, this is something you could be considered as an invention. All right, so we have talked about Article 52.2, which are what's not considered to be technical and thus not considered to be an invention. Then we move to Article 53. Here we also have exceptions to patentability, but the nuance is a little different here. Exceptions to patentability are technical inventions with our exceptions, that are accepted from patentability. So Article 53A says that inventions that would be contrary to morality or public order public, would be are accepted for patentability. So if the invention is about a new type of atomic bomb, you cannot get a patent for this. Or if it's about cloning a human being, something like that. Then we have plants or animal varieties, or essentially biological processes for the production of plants or animals. Here again, if the patent is about a new breed of dog or a new variety of watermelon, which is very sweet, and you have a method of, putting it in a greenhouse, using some special bees to pollinize, that's something you cannot get a patent for. What you can get a patent for are microbiological processes or the products thereof. So new type of yogurt using some bacteria is something you might file for a patent. And then we have methods for treatment of the human body, human or animal body, by surgery, therapy, and diagnostic methods practiced on the human or animal body. So if the patent application is about a knee surgery, how you go about doing incision, exposing your knee, and in a way that would, let's say, prevent scar tissue, might be technical, but it's because you're actuating on the human body, practicing on a human body, that would not be it would be accepted for patentability. Like if you have a heart disease diagnosis where you would probe the heart with electrodes, something like that, it would also be not considered to be would be accepted for patentability. What you can get patents for are products or substances that you can use on those methods, right? Or even devices that you could use on those methods. So imagine you could use minoxidil to improve hair transplant, right? It's something, let's say, minoxidil being a composition that you could use to improve the success rate of a hair transplant. That's something you could file a patent for. We're going to cover more about that when we talk about Articles 54.4 and 5, which deal with this type of substances and compositions. All right, so why would you even bother patenting, right? Why do patents matter also to researchers? Imagine you have groundbreaking research, something that could have a great impact on a given industry. Why would you better patenting? Well, patent costs money, right? It costs time and money, so why would you bother? Well, because you can protect your innovation, right? Essentially, patents will give an exclusive right to exploit that invention, and you can prevent others from copying your invention, right? If you can prevent others from copying your invention, you can bring products to the market based on those patents, and that it would actually you can command higher prices because you would have less competition, and therefore you can recoup your investment costs, right, in terms of R&D. But you might say, but I'm not much into the manufacturing. I think I would need factories. I would need economies of scale. In my industry, I cannot compete. Well, how about a intellectual property business, right? Where you license your inventions to those companies that have factories, that have economies of scale. You can license your patents to them. Let's say a yearly license or unit sold license on a unit sold, or you can sell your patents outright to them, right? Tomorrow, we're going to cover that in great detail when we talk about the case studies. And you see that's not so easy to actually talk about licensing to large companies. But yeah, we'll cover that tomorrow in great detail in the case studies. Last obvious reason is that patents are an awesome negotiating tool, right? Especially when you're shopping for investment. You want to start a company and you go to an investment meeting. And by the way, your products are protected by 5-6 patents. that gives you a lot of credibility, right? It's not, you arrive there and you say, hey, I have thought this through. And it gives you a lot of credibility, and it's much easier for you to attract investment. And finally, because you file a patent, you can safely disclose your invention, right? Because once you file a patent, you're covered. And as Enrico told you in the last presentation, once the patent is published, you have provisional protection for that. And by the way, you can also ask for early publication. That would also give you provisional protection. So once you have a patent you covered, you can safely disclose. You can go to investors and talk freely about the details. You can go to a trade fair and present your products. Give samples of your products. Are there any questions? Are there any questions? Maybe we can go over the questions before I move into novelty and the state of the art. Anybody have any questions?
Sorry, Arthur. Yes, I had one. So thanks for the examples of what is excluded from patentability.
Yes.
You mentioned all the medical procedures, and I'm trying to understand: is there a deeper reason for why? Is it skill that cannot be just Is there
the reason why you would prevent it? Because it's practiced on the human body, right? The human or animal body. That's the reasoning behind. Maybe Enrico can also intervene.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. Thank you for the question. I was just answering in the chat, Pooja. The reasoning behind the approach. So first of all, you can protect them. Arthur will tell you more. You can protect therapeutic methods and medical procedures. You just need to follow a by way, so to speak. It's a legal fiction, but Arthur will tell you more. The reason for this approach is that in Europe it was considered we need to leave medical doctors completely free of exercising their skills and treating patients. If you give them a patent from a legal point of view, as a chemist, I had some problems understanding this, but that's the way it is. If you say method for treating patient by doing X, by giving a medicament, that method is implemented and put into practice by a medical doctor. And if he or she does that, he's infringing the patent, which means that you as patent owner could go to the medical doctor while he is treating the patient and say, stop, patient dies, but I've enforced my rights. So that's what we want to avoid. Now I'm a bit exaggerating, but that's the mindset behind it. That's why the legislators, they were called the fathers of the EPC, but there were also women involved. So I would say the parents of the EPC had a different view. In the beginning, the approach was very weird. It was a so-called Swiss format. Now, with a revision of the EPC that took place, that was implemented in 2007, the so-called EPC 2000, the formulation has been really enshrined and introduced into the convention. And you need to patent a medical treatment. You need to follow those that wording. So from the matter of substantive matter, it's the same. The medical treatment, the therapeutic treatment is protected. You simply, in Europe, need to use a specific formulation. The reason of it being what I just said, being sure that medical doctors are completely free of treating their patients. But you'll hear more when Arthur gives you the examples, and we can address.
I'll be talking about Article 54, 4, and 5. Essentially,
exactly.
Yeah, you can get patents on medicines, right? So you can actually get a patent on minoxidil or
well, why do we always, Arthur? Why do we always mention hair? I don't know. I mean, I don't want to cooperate with this guy any longer, Tom. He's not a part of our club, is he? As you can see. So
I'm trying not to.
The hair transplant, minoxidil. No, am I inspiring you to some extent, Arthur? But sorry, just another thing, and there's also another question about can we get a new use patent on a known component? This will also be addressed in a moment. Arthur, over to you. I've spoken far too much. I hope
Okay.
Did I answer your question?
So let's say aspirin. If you can get a patent on aspirin. What you cannot get a patent for is the method of giving the aspirin to swallow an aspirin or something like that. So you prevent the doctor to do his job. Well, anyways, so we're moving into novelty and the state of the art, and that's defined by Article 54 APC. And it says that Article 54.1 says that an invention shall be considered to be new if it does not form part of the state of the art. Okay, and also state of the art, also known as prior art, aka prior art. And what's the state of the art? Well, that's Article 54.2. Article 54.2 says that the state of the art shall be held to comprise everything made available to the public by means of written or oral description, by use or any other way, before the date of filing of the European patent application. So here, very important is the date of filing of the European application, because essentially you're drawing a line in the sand. Everything that's published before the date of filing of the patent application can be used to destroy novelty, to jeopardize, to attack your invention. Everything that's published after that will not be used, cannot be used to jeopardize your patent application, to destroy novelty of your patent application. Okay, so that's very important. Then we have Article 54.3. That's a kind of a corner case scenario. It talks about conflicting applications. Okay, there are some fields which are very prolific, that evolve very fast, and many people are working on the same product simultaneously. So imagine one field is, let's say, artificial intelligence. So imagine you're an artificial intelligence engineer and you're working on a machine learning algorithm. You file a patent application today, and let's say 2 weeks from now, your competitor was working on the very same algorithm, and he files a patent application claiming the same algorithm. What happens in this case? Remember what Tom said, what Enrico said. When you file a patent application, it takes 18 months to get published, right? So your patent application, you filed first, but your patent application is not published yet. Your competitor knows nothing about it. So your patent application is not considered to be prior art under Article 54.2. So what happens in that case? Well, Article 54.3 takes care of it, essentially making sure that the first person, the first inventor, the first applicant who files the patent application will get the patent, right? Will get protection for that invention. And Article 54.3 essentially allows me as an examiner, if I receive a patent application of, let's say, your competitor 2 weeks later, I can use your application to destroy novelty of the application of your competitor, even if your application is not published yet, because it's both Europeans application. All right. I cannot use to attack inventive step. That's a different story. So in practice, your competitor will also probably get something more limited, perhaps, but at least it prevents this type of the same patent being granted to 2 different applicants. It's a kind of a corner case scenario, right? It's something that I would raise, let's say, 2-3 times a year, not more. All right, so then we have Article 54.4 and 54.5. Article 54.4 is essentially what we talked about. It's the first medical use of a known substance. Okay, let's not talk about minoxidil anymore. Let's talk about aspirin. Imagine, aspirin was well known from the 1900s, right? It was already well documented, the composition of aspirin. And at some point, Bayern discovered that aspirin could be used as a pain reliever. So they can file for a patent. Aspirin was well known, right? So aspirin was not novel. But the first medical use of aspirin, Article 54.4 essentially restores novelty for the medical use of aspirin. Okay, it essentially restores novelty, and then that's Article 54.4, right? Article 54.5 would be a second medical use of a given substance, right? So imagine you find that aspirin is not only good for pain, for headaches, but also good for cardiovascular disease, for instance, to blood clot or making blood thinner. Well, if you claim aspirin with that second medical use, aspirin becomes novel again under Article 54.5. It essentially resurrects novelty an aspirin, and you will resurrect over and over again when you find new medical use of that substance. Does that make sense a little bit? I'm not from that field, so I might say sometimes if I use examples, I might say nonsense. So but Enrico is from that field, and he can intervene at any time. All right, so
you're doing great, Arthur. So
hey, thanks. All right, so what's the state of the art? That's Article 54.2. It's essentially everything that's made available to the public before the date of filing of the application. Remember, we're drawing a line in the sand. Everything that's filed before that can be used to attack your patent application, right? So a written description, any type of written descriptions we're talking about here. We're talking about patent applications that are published, scientific papers, even a local ad and a newspaper, right? Let's say your local newspaper, local ad on your local newspaper could be used. Oral descriptions, it can be a conference. You went to a conference and you present about your research. Well, bad news, it can be used against your patent application. Also, you went to a podcast and talked about your invention. Careful. And by use as well, okay? And here, careful, because available to the public suffices that at least one member of the public would have had access to the information before the date of filing. And this person was not bound to any non-disclosure agreement, any secrecy or confidentiality. So imagine you go to a trade fair and you go to a trade fair, you have a booth there, and nobody comes, just one person enters and comes, and you give a sample of your product to that person. And next week you file a patent application. Well, that one sample that you gave to one person can potentially jeopardize your application. So be very careful there. Okay, let's show you an example. Imagine you file a patent application with us. That's on May 5th, 2005. Okay, long time ago, but okay. So imagine somebody's doing a research on the very same subject, and he brings his PhD thesis or her PhD thesis to a library on May 1st, 2005. That's before the date of filing, okay? But here's the catch. The library records show that the first consultation of that thesis happened on May 11, 2005. My question to you here is this thesis here part of the state of the art as defined by Article 54.2 EPC? In other words, can an examiner object your application in view of this thesis? What do you guys think? You can type on the chat. What do you think? Yes or no? Is the thesis prior art to the patent application? Yeah, it's tricky, this one, right? So the answer here is no. Yes, the thesis is prior art. Okay, because it doesn't really matter when the person first consulted. It could be that nobody had ever consulted the PhD thesis. The first person who consulted was the examiner who was searching for that application. What really matters here is when it was available to the public. And it was available to the public on May 1st. That's before the date of filing, okay? A few days before, but all right? So here, what's important is not when people consulted, but when it was already available or to be consulted. Okay, important comment here is that here in Europe, we don't have the so-called grace period that some people know from the States. I guess that in the States, I'm not super acquainted with their legislation, but I guess that if you are a researcher and you publish your patent application, you publish your research, you go to a conference and present your research, you still have a 1 year time to actually file for a patent application. That's not the case here in Europe, okay? So it's very important for PhD researchers, master students who want to file patents for their research. And I know that PhD students, one of their requirements is that they publish their research in a journal or something. Sometimes are prerequisite for a PhD degree. So if you're planning to file a patent, very important is file first, publish later. Or at the very least, file and publish on the same day, okay? Otherwise, you jeopardize your patent application. Novelty is destroyed only if the document discloses the claim subject matter clearly and unambiguously and reproducibly. In other words, it needs to be, novelty is really black and white. You really need to have a disclosure really clear and unambiguous, right? And reproducibly in the sense that you know how to arrive at that feature. That not that the feature is disclosed to be arrived randomly or through a mutation or something like that. And also sometimes features can be implicit on what's disclosed. Okay, they don't need to be. They can be implicit, meaning that they can be directly and unambiguously derived from what was disclosed. So an example would be you claim a car with a fuel tank, and then I find a document that discloses that mentions a vehicle, a combustion engine vehicle. Well, a combustion engine vehicle implicitly discloses a fuel tank because a combustion engine needs a fuel tank, so the fuel tank was implicitly disclosed. Same goes for a bicycle with 2 wheels, and if I find the mention of a bicycle, yeah, the 2 wheels are implicit there. Does that make sense a little bit? Okay, so sometimes some features are implicitly disclosed, if that makes sense. All right, so now I'd like to go show you an example how we as examiners here at the European Patent Office, or examiners in general, would go about assessing novelty of a patent application. Okay, what's the mechanism? How we go about doing this? And we have a very simple invention here, so it's very easy to follow. We have the invention is here in Figure 1, depicted in Figure 1. And it claims a device for watering plants having a water-containing portion, that's 1, a handle, number 2, an opening with a lid, that's number 3, opening with a lid, and a spout, number 4. A spout is nothing but a projecting pipe or a tube. All right, so how do we go about seeing if this invention is novel? So we do a prior art search, and let's imagine we found 6 relevant documents. And the documents are depicting the devices here. How do we go about assessing whether or not this invention is novel? And we do so by comparing, contrasting the features of the claim with our documents. And we go one by one. So essentially, we're going to list all the features. Some people use a table like this one. And we're going to see whether or not one single document, not a combination of documents, we have one document that would disclose each and every feature of the claim. All right, so let's do this exercise. Okay, so the first feature is a device for watering plants. Let's check document A. Document A is an oil dispenser. Is it a device for watering plants? What do you guys think? Can you feel free to type on the chat? What do you think? Is it a device for watering plants? We have an oil dispenser here. What do you guys think? Yes or no? Yes, and I see that some people have a very good intuition there. Indeed, when we as patent examiners read a device for something, right, or a composition for something, or an apparatus for something, we need to read this very broadly, right? And our guidelines say that when we read a device for something, or an apparatus for something, what we're really reading there as a device which is suitable for something, okay? It's we have to read it broadly. So what I have to check now is my oil dispenser suitable for watering plants? That's what the feature actually is we are reading this very broadly. So a device for watering plants, is the oil container a device for a device which is suitable for oiling plants, for watering plants? And the answer here is yes. Okay, because if I put water in this oil dispenser, I can use to water my plants, right? It's good enough. It would do the job. Okay, if I put water in it, I can use to water my plants. So therefore, we would say that this feature is disclosed. Okay, we're reading it broadly as a device suitable for watering plants, and A is falls into that category, and therefore falls within the scope of the claim. Then we have a water-containing portion. Well, we have an oil-containing portion, and we have to read it broadly. So if I put water in the oil-containing portion, it's a water-containing portion. So that feature is also disclosed. Do we have a handle? Yes, we do. Do we have an opening? Well, we have at least an opening in the spout there. There is one. And does it have a lid? Here, I'm not really sure. Remember, novelty is black and white. Is it clearly and unambiguously disclosed? All I have here is this picture, nothing more, right? And I would say that we don't have an opening with a lid there. And therefore, I would say that this document is not novelty destroying. Okay, so let's move to the second document, document B. Is it a device for watering plants? And the answer is yes, it's a device for watering plants. Does it have a water containing portion? Yes, it does. A handle? Yes. An opening? Yes. And does it have a lid? No, we don't. So this document is also not novelty destroying. C is also not novelty destroying. Look, we're missing a handle. We're missing a lid. I don't know if that would be suitable for a spout there, what we have there. I think it would drop if it, so I don't know. So C is not novelty destroying. D misses at least a handle, so it's not novelty destroying. E looks promising. A kettle. Can I use a kettle for watering plants? And the answer is yes, as long as I put water in, I can use it to water my plants. Does it have a water containing portion? Yes. A handle? Yes. An opening with a lid? Yes, it does. And a spout as well. So E is novelty destroying, right? One document having all features of the claim. That's what we're looking for. And that's what we found here. So I can safely say that the claim 1 does not comply with Article 54. And I can raise an objection, Article 54, 1 and 2, depending on the date of filing of document E. So here we have one novelty destroying document. F is not novelty destroying. We're missing also quite a bit of features there as well. Does that make sense a little bit? This is how we would go about assessing novelty of a claim. And obviously things are much more complex because here we just have a one-line claim, right? And the documents were just simple pictures here. In reality, we have a claim that would be at the very least a paragraph long, or oftentimes longer. And then we also have documents which have plural various pictures and also a lot of text as well, several pages of descriptions. Does that make sense? Okay. In essence, that's what we do to assess Article 54. Okay, so now I'd like to show you a few concepts about novelty when we assess novelty. And the first one, and is a very important one, is generic versus specific disclosure. Okay, so imagine you claim a watering can made of metal. I do a prior art search and I find a watering can made of aluminum. Is the claim novel? Is the claim new? What do you guys think? You can type. And I see here people are well informed. Yeah, no, it's not. The claim is not new. You are asking protection for a lot. You're asking protection for a watering can made of any metal, gold, copper, iron, and aluminum. So if I can prove that there is a watering can made of aluminum falls within the scope of metal, and the claim is not novel. So the idea here is that a specific disclosure will destroy novelty of a generic disclosure. Does that make sense? Here we have the other way around. We claim a watering can made of aluminum, and the prior art is a watering can made of metal. The other way around, so is the claim new? So here it would be the other way around. Yes, correct. All right, now we're moving to use claims. Okay. So imagine you claim a use of a known substance A as an additive in oil for reducing friction. And the prior art is a use of the substance A as an additive in oil for inhibiting rust. Is the claim new? What do you guys think? And look here, the nuance is the following. We're claiming the use, the action, not the substance. Okay. And I see the answers here. Yeah, the claim is new, right? Because substance A was never used before to reduce friction. It was there to inhibit rust. So the claim is targeting the use, right? Is asking protection for the use, the action. And in that case, the claim is novel. Here we have a substance X for use as an additive in oil for reducing friction, and the prior art is a substance X for use as an additive in oil to inhibit rust. Is the claim new here? Right? Is the claim new? How do we read something that when we look at an apparatus, at the composition, substance, when we read for use, you need to read it broadly. Remember, we need to use suitable for. And in this case, since substance X is known, it would also be suitable for reducing friction, even if it was only used to inhibit rust. But if I used to reduce friction, it would do the job, right? So substance X is known, so the claim is not novel. Okay, does that make sense? Remember, the nuance is different. Here, we have a use. We're claiming the use, right? The action. Here we claim the composition, right? So in here we have the claim is new. Here the claim is not, because substance is also, we have to read broadly as something that's suitable for. But how about now? Substance X for use as a medicament. The prior art is substance X for use as an additive in oil to inhibit rust. What you guys think? Is it the claim new now? And I see people are on top of things, and yes, now the claim is new. So miraculously, the Article 54.4 restores novelty of the known substance, right? Is the aspirin thing, right? Then it becomes new. So the bottom line is that when we are using no medical patent language, for is tantamount to suitable, whereas so that means that a cup for drinking coffee would be also suitable for drinking tea, for drinking water, and so on and so forth, except medical use. Therefore, use is limiting. Okay, it will limit for that use. In that case, it becomes novel, right? Substance X for use as a medicament is novel. And that's Article 54.4, and Article 54.5 would be the further use of the substance in a medical environment. So every new medical environment would resurrect novelty of that substance. All right, then we have product by process. Product by process essentially is also, we have to read very broadly. So product by process is a process that will result into a product. And we're claiming in that way. It's not a normal way to claim a product or a device, but it comes every now and then. So when we read a product obtained by a process, what we should really read broadly is a product obtainable by that process, but it can also be obtained by other processes. What we're claiming protection is for the product, right? So I'll give you an example. Imagine you have a claim that claims a shoe S obtained by a process P. The question here is whether or not the shoe by itself is known. So if the process, all it's doing, right? Maybe you have a novel process. All it's doing is actually making, let's say, the shoe cheaper. Imagine the known process would be that you process a shoe on an assembly line, one by one, and you buy a new machine that actually now processes shoes in batches of 5. The process is new, right? Is processing more shoes at once. Shoes are cheaper to produce, but it's the same shoe, and you're claiming the shoe obtained by the process. So even if the process is new and makes the shoe cheaper, the shoe is still the same. So the claim is not novel. If the process would change the shoe, imagine the process would make the shoe more durable. Imagine there is a new machine that vulcanizes the shoe and the shoe is much more durable. Then we have a different shoe. Then the claim is novel. Does that make sense a little bit? That's the concept of product by process. All right, then we move into selection inventions. Here we're talking about lists and subranges. And so an example would be, imagine you claim a pharmaceutical composition comprising ibuprofen and vitamin C. I do a prior art search and I find one document that says a pharmaceutical composition comprising 2 active ingredients taken from the following lists. And then we have two long lists. That list one with ingredients one that would comprise ibuprofen, okay? And then we also have another list that among many vitamins, it has vitamin C. Is the claim new? What do you guys think? Yeah, it seems that people are really on top. Yeah, the claim is not new. The claim is new, okay? The claim is new. Why is it the claim new? Because, okay, I give it up, right? We have one document disclosing a pharmaceutical composition, disclosing ibuprofen and vitamin C. But here's the catch. The combination of ibuprofen and vitamin C is not disclosed. Remember, the claim here is claiming a very specific combination, ibuprofen and vitamin C. The combination is not disclosed. This document is bringing us very close. All you have to do is to pick from this list ibuprofen and vitamin C, but we still have to pick from the two lists. And that picking is not disclosed yet. The combination is not disclosed. So the claim is new, okay? Inventive, it's a different story, but it's new, okay? In other words, an arbitrary combination of two or more lists, both having a certain length, is not considered to have been disclosed in this case. Does that make sense? Yeah, okay, that question is a good one for Article 54.3. Maybe we take it to the end, the Article 54.3 question. It's a good one. All right. Okay, so as far as subranges are concerned, they need to be, if you're claiming a subrange of a known range, it needs to be a narrow to become novel. It needs to be narrow, and the endpoints need to be sufficiently far apart. I'll show you examples. It will be easier to understand. Imagine we're talking about, let's say, curing plastics, temperatures for curing a type of plastic. And you claim that you can cure a plastic from 35 degrees to 45 degrees. I do a prior art search and I find a document that says, oh, we're curing plastics from 10 degrees Celsius to 100 degrees Celsius. Is your claim new here? What do you guys think? And your claim is new. Why is your claim new? Because you have a narrow range, and here we have a broad range. Okay. The points are far apart. 35 is far apart from 10, 45 is far apart from 100. And essentially your claim is narrow, right? So in this case, your claim is new. Whether or not it's inventive is a different story, but it's new. Here we have the other way around. You're claiming a lot now. You're claiming, hey, I can cure plastics from 10 to 100 degrees Celsius. Okay, so you're asking protection for a lot here, from 10 to 100. If I find a prior art that shows something that falls within the scope of this range, I'm destroying novelty of the range. Okay, 35 or 45, right? So here it's the same principle of a specific disclosure destroys novelty of broad disclosure, but here apply to ranges. And then finally, imagine we have a claim. We're claiming 50 and 63. We found a prior art which is very broad, 10 to 100. So in theory, you would have novelty, narrow, far apart. But it turns out that, let's say, in the text of the application, you will say, but by the way, 55 degrees is it's one of the best temperatures. Yeah, then in that case, because you have one example there falling into an explicit example following into that range, then it destroys novelty of the range. Does that make sense? It could be that the prior art didn't even disclose the range, only 55 degrees Celsius. That would also destroy novelty of the range, okay? All right, so we're now moving into inventive step. As far as Article 54.3, the question was, Article 54.3 only relates to EP applications and PCT applications in the European phase. If fees are paid...
I think we've dealt with that.
Yeah.
But I mean, you can add, but I've answered.
That's a perfect answer.
One.
That's a perfect answer, yeah. All right, so we're moving into inventive step. Okay, so once novelty is overcome, the next crucial patentability requirements is 56. Article 56 is the inventive step. Okay, Article 56 says that an invention shall be considered as involving an inventive step if, having regard to the state of the art, also known as prior art, it's not obvious to a person skilled in the art. also known as, AKA, skilled person. So we're setting a bar here, right? Otherwise, any obvious modification would become a patent, and that wouldn't make sense, right? So the invention needs to be a non-obvious modification of what's out there, but non-obvious to who, right? That's the question we should ask, right? So if I show, like, if I showed details of like details of a microprocessor, I claim a microprocessor, put a lot of details, and I show them to a chemist, like I showed to Enrico, for instance, it would be hard for him to tell whether or not that's invented. It could be that those details are just common general knowledge. And the other way around, if he shows me details of some application in chemistry, I have no idea. So who is the skilled person? That's an important question to answer. It needs to be somebody from the field. And the skilled person is a fictional person. The skilled person doesn't really exist, right? It's somebody we impersonate as examiners here when we examine patent applications. So a skilled person is supposed to be a practitioner in the relevant field, sometimes a team. If the invention is borderline between microelectronics and telecommunications, be a team of a microelectronics engineer plus a telecommunications engineer. A skilled person possesses average knowledge and ability, is aware of common general knowledge in a particular technical field at the relevant date. Very important, right? Sometimes we as patent examiners, we're examining patent applications that have been filed, let's say, 5 years ago. It takes time for patents to be granted. But imagine, I'm examining a patent application that was filed 5 years ago. The common general knowledge is not the common general knowledge of today, is the common general knowledge of 5 years ago. Okay, the relevant date here is, for this presentation, is the date of filing. Could be the priority date. And the skilled person has access to everything in the state of the art and in any language. So the skilled person would have access to patent applications filed in Japan in Japanese. Any skilled person understands Japanese. And the skilled person would find scientific papers in China, in a Chinese journal. Okay, or a local newspaper in Greece. And the skilled person has normal capacity for routine work, but here's the catch: no inventive skills. Okay, so the skilled person, everything that's routine work, the skilled person would arrive at. Everything that requires an inventive step, the skilled person would not arrive at. Right, the skilled person is devoid of inventiveness. Right, so and that's very important when we're assessing inventive step. So think about the skilled person as an average engineer in the field who would know all the tools that are needed for the job, let's say all CAD software, but it would not have a flash of genius, if you will. Okay, so how do we at the APO go about assessing inventive step? We do so the so-called problem solution approach. It's in our guidelines. It's a structured method, a structured way and consistent way that we do for assessing inventive step of patent applications. And I have to do it. My coworker has also needs to do it. If I go on vacation and he needs to examine my files, he's going to use the problem solution approach. So it's something we use systematically here. Okay. And so the idea is that we provide the applicants with a systematic way, not something like gut feeling or some customized way to look at inventions and decide whether or not they're inventive. And the problem solution approach can be has 3 steps, but can be broken down in many more. And here we're showing 5, and the 5th one can also be broken down. So here, the first step would be finding the closest prior art. Once novelty is established, there will always be one document which is the most promising document that we call the closest prior art. Might have the most features in common, coming from the technical field. Then once we have the closest prior art, we look at the difference between the closest prior art and the claimed invention. Let's give you a concrete example. Imagine we're back in 2008, and the patent application is about a smartphone with a touchscreen display. Imagine a phone with a touchscreen display. Back in the day, 2008, those are very uncommon, all right? We get this patent application, we do a prior art search, we find lots of mobile phone documents or other devices documents, and we decide that the closest prior art would be, let's say, a BlackBerry phone with a keyboard. Let's say a Nokia phone with a keyboard. That's our closest prior art. All right, so what's the difference between the closest prior art and our patent application? In this case, it's the touch screen display, okay? Let's imagine. Then the next step would be, what is the technical effect of this difference? What is the technical effect of a touch screen display? Well, a touch screen display will allow me to zoom, to tap, to do various things that I cannot do with a keyboard, or I would be able to do, but hardly, right? It would be cumbersome. So the technical effect here would be improving usability of this phone. I can use it better, right? I can scroll, I can interact with the display much more intuitively. Okay, so next step would be to find what's the technical problem being solved here. Remember, I talked about what's the technical problem being solved. We are always asking this question. So based on that difference, what is the technical problem being solved? Well, the technical problem being solved here is how to improve usability of this phone, right? To make the phone more user-friendly. That's the technical problem we have to solve. And then finally, we decide whether or not, starting from the closest prior art, my Nokia phone with a keyboard, and having regard to the problem to be solved, in this case, how to improve usability of my phone, I would arrive at this very same claimed solution, which is a touchscreen display. And that's the question I have to answer. Okay, so now, and remember, for novelty, I could only use one document. Here, for inventive step, I can combine documents. I can look at common general knowledge. Was touchscreen displays common general knowledge in phones? Not now, back in 2008. And I don't remember very well, but I would say it was not. So let's imagine it was not. Or it was, then it was not inventive out of the bat. But let's imagine it was not. Then I look around, do I have other documents pointing to that? Are there any documents saying, talking about a touchscreen display, maybe another device that would hint to that solution? Are they compatible? Can I combine those two documents? Those are all questions we have to answer when we're working the problem solution approach. All right, so the problem solution approach is a systematic way we do things, not gut feeling, not some customized way. We need to follow this structure. We offer applicants with that structure. And what's in it for you? You might think that you are the examiner. I'm on the other side. Well, if you understand the problem solution approach, you understand how we work. We speak the same language, and you can spot mistakes on my reasoning, right? So it's understanding the problem solution approach is something valuable on the other side as well. Okay, the problem solution approach having 3 steps here, defining the 3 steps: finding the closest prior art, establish the objective technical problem, and then check whether or not it would be obvious. Starting from the closest prior art, looking at the objective technical problem to be solved, would I arrive at this very claimed solution? Okay, important. Okay, we move on here. When we choose a closest prior art, the closest prior art is the most, we call the best springboard to the invention. Okay, it would be typically in the same technical field, have most features in common, have a similar purpose. Important is that closest prior art, you take time to find the closest prior art because it sets the stage for the entire problem solution approach. You get the closest prior art wrong, the outcome might be different. Okay, so we have to be careful about that one. And then we establishing the objective technical problem. Once we know the difference, there will be a difference. What's the effect of that difference? And we define a problem to be solved. Important here is that we define the problem broadly, and we don't put elements of the solution into the problem. Okay. I remember I defined the problem quite broadly. I said how to improve usability of the phone. I'm not putting any elements of the solution in there. What if I said that the problem was how to improve the interaction with the display of the phone? Then I'm hinting to the solution, and that would be a mistake. If I would do that, the patent attorney would say, hey, you're not defining the problem correctly, right? Your argumentation is not sound. It is inventive. Okay, so choosing the problem solution, formulating the problem is also important. How you do that? Don't put elements of the solution into the problem. Also, the problem can change. Scope can change. You can narrow down the scope. Sometimes when the patent application is drafted, the problem is much more ambitious. Imagine the problem was how to stay connected with the smartphone. How I stay connected. That's an ambitious problem, right? A large problem. But when you find a Nokia phone also allows you to stay connected, right? So the problem there, in view of the prior art, shifts, and it can be much more narrow. And in this case, the problem would be how to improve usability of the phone, much less ambitious, right? So depending on the proposed prior art, the problem will shift. Okay, so to end this presentation, I'd like to work together with you an inventive step case, a problem solution approach that we do it together here. And it's a simple invention again, right? Just to give you a sense on how it works. In practice would be a much more complex thing with the complex documents and all that. But all right. So imagine the invention is a simple cup that when you pour a hot liquid, a hot drink, it will change color to essentially tell you that the liquid is hot, that you will not burn yourself. So the claim reads, a ceramic beverage cup with a handle, the cup wall comprising integrated thermochromic material that changes color when the liquid inside is hotter than 60 degrees Celsius. All right, that's the invention. Invention is here. Then we do a prior art search and we find two relevant documents, only those two documents. We find a ceramic cup with a printed written warning, caution, hot beverage. That's D1. And we find D2, which describes a plastic chemical container painted with thermochromic paint that changes color when the liquid inside exceeds 60 degrees Celsius to warn factory workers of overheated contents. That's D2. All right, first question to you. What do you guys think? Is this invention new? Does it comply with Article 54? Let's start there. Is it new? Do we have one document that would disclose all features of the invention? That's what we're asking. Is the invention new? And the invention is new. Indeed is new, right? D1 misses the thermochromic material. D1 has somewhat thermochromic paint, but it doesn't have is not of ceramic, does not have a handle. So the invention is new. Okay, Article 54 complied with, check. Now we move to Article 56. Now assessing inventive step. Okay, first step of the problem solution approach is, what is the closest prior art? What do you guys think here is the closest prior art? Closest prior art should be in the same technical field, have most features in common, or serving a similar purpose. What do you guys think? Is it D2 or D1? And here again, I like to tell you that when it comes to novelty, it's very black and white. It's binary. Novel, not novel, very direct and ambiguous disclosure, then we can say novel, not novel. When it comes to inventive step, we're venturing gray area. There will be room for debate and argumentation. Also among members of the division. Remember that we're a division of 3, so we can argue about that as well. But certainly with the patent attorney. Attorney typically has a different opinion on many things, right? So whether D1 or D2, I would say arguably D1 is the closest prior art. Okay, I'll tell you what, D1 is the closest prior art because I would say that the technical field here would be a vessel for hot drinks. And D1 also has temperature indicating. It serves the same purpose, right? There's a cup for hot drinks that also warns the user that when it's too hot, is only that a static warning, right? It says caution, hot beverage there. So it's going to that direction already, right? So D1 here I would call D1 the best springboard to the invention, because D2, yes, indeed, it's very relevant, right? It has that thermochromic thing, right? It's great, but how you would go about changing that into a cup, starting from there to end into a cup, because in the end we need to end at the claimed invention, right? So arguably I would say D1 is the closest prior art. Okay, so we decide on the closest prior art being D1. Next step is, what is the difference between the closed prior art and the claimed invention? Well, the difference here is that the cup wall comprises integrated thermochromic material that changes color when the liquid inside is hotter than 60 degrees Celsius. Okay. So what is the technical effect of this difference? That's the next step. Well, we have here a more reliable real-time indication when the beverage is too hot. Okay, in D1 we have an indication, but it's a static indication. Here we have a real-time indication, right? We put, and the color changes, so you know that that is too hot. It shows immediately, right? So okay, so now the problem. Next step is what's the problem to be solved? And again, let's be careful not to put elements of the solution into the problem. Okay, let's not make that mistake. And I would say the problem to be solved here is how to provide a user with a reliable, real-time indication when the beverage is too hot. Okay, not putting any details. I'm not saying to when is hotter than 60 degrees Celsius, or you know, like I'm formulating the problem broadly. So now is the final step. Starting from D1, our cup, and looking at the problem to be solved, how to provide the user with a reliable real-time indication when the beverage is too hot. Would the skilled person arrive at this very same claimed solution? Namely, I'll read here. A ceramic beverage cup with a handle, a cup comprising integrated thermochromic material that changes color when the liquid is hot. All those features we have to arrive at. Okay. So, okay, so let's start with common general knowledge. Is the thermochromic paint common general knowledge? Is something that you would see it every day, or you would see it every time? And I would contend it's not, right? It's not. A thermochromic paint would be something common general knowledge you would find in every cup. So I would say I cannot, from D1 plus common general knowledge, I don't arrive at the claim solution. I need something else. So I look at D2. Wow, D2 looks promising, right? It's great, actually. Let's go back there. D2. D2 does have a thermochromic paint that changes color at what temperature? 60 degrees Celsius. That's exactly the same, right? So what about if I combine D1 and D2? And also is solving the same technical problem, right? Is warning people that things are hot, too hot. So it's it's being used on the same to save the same problem, right? So it's great. Maybe I can combine D1 and D2. If I use that paint and I paint my cup, I kind of arrive at the claim solution. But the question now is to answer whether or not D1 and D2 are compatible. Okay, can I really make that combination, right? I need to really decide that beyond any reasonable doubt that combination would lead to the claim solution. So what do I do now? I have to scrutinize those two documents to see if they're compatible. Okay, I need to do that. So let's do that. Let's go and do that. Okay, D1, the warning is static. There's no real-time temperature indication. And now I scrutinize D1 and D2 to see if they're compatible. Okay, so I look at D2 and I find some interest. I find the following information. D2 says that the paint works best on polyurethane surfaces for visible color changes, but would also work on other plastics as long as they are flexible. Okay, that's interesting information, right? It's saying that it would work, but it's actually saying that it works good with plastics and also flexible plastics. So I start wondering, oh, would that work on my ceramic cup? What are the temperature conductivity of ceramic and plastics are different, right? What if I use the paint of D2 in D1 and the temperature changes at 30 degrees, not at 60 as it needs to be? Would that work, right? And that's the assessment I have to do here. Is this combination credible? Would that work? And in this case, it seems that it would not work, because D2, by saying that it works with plastics and needs to be flexible, is actually teaching away from this combination. Okay, it's discouraging the direct application to hard materials like ceramic. Like I said, maybe I use that paint and then it turns out, whoa, it's changing the temperature at 30 degrees because ceramic is much better conductor of temperature, right? So in that case, because the combination is not very solid, yeah, it has all the features, but combining seems to be challenging. So I would say in that case, I would give it up to the applicant. You would have the invention, the claim would comply with Article 56 in view of the available prior art. All right. I hope that gives you a little sense on what we have to do, what we normally do. And again, I would need to, it could be that I have missed that information, that crucial information. Imagine that information that would discourage the combination was in paragraph 400 and something on page 256, and I just missed that information. And I do a solid argumentation on inventive steps. Say, hey, I can start from D1, I combine D2, and then I destroy, I arrive at the claim solution. The claim 1 is not inventive. I'm sure that in 2 months' time, I get a reply letter from the applicant, and the the patent attorney will scrutinize D2 and D1 and will find that information, because stakes are really high. And they will do that, right? So I will get a reply letter saying, hey, by the way, your inventive step is not sound. You're missing this information here. That's evidence that the combination won't not work, okay? And if the patent attorney does that, and he does that in the problem solution approach and shows me the problem solution approach and show why it would not be obvious, he's scoring points with us, right? Because he's speaking our language, and I can sell that to the division as well, right? So I hope this presentation gives you a little sense on how things work. And yeah, we could now move into the questions. Yes, I think we're almost time now. We can. Are there any questions? And please, don't be shy. Raise your hand and take the mic and speak up.
Crazy stunned silence again, Arthur, just like Enrico did. I think that I noticed there was a couple of questions, sort of to comments on just starting with D1 or D2 in your example.
Yes.
Obviously, because D2 had sort of the color change aspect.
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. So it all depends what is the common. So imagine if you start from D2. Imagine you start from D2. D2 has already the crucial features, right? But how do you start from D2 and you arrive at a cup with a ceramic cup with it's like again, inventive step is gray area. We can debate that, but it seems to me that D1 is, because it's in the same technical field. I would call the field the vessels for hot drinks. I would tend to take D1. D1 is in the same technical field, right? It's about a mug, D1. And it has temperature indications already. So how do I improve that? It's an incremental improvement. In the other one, I really have to overhaul the device. I have to start from something, start from an apple and end in a banana. Something like that.
I guess,
right?
Otherwise, because from D1 you're upgrading a cup, whereas
yes, I'm upgrading that cup,
D2,
right?
You're taking something else and forcing it. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So I think D1 is a better springboard to the invention here. Again, applicant will disagree, and we're gonna have discussions about all that. Division will disagree too. Right? Inventive step is always, and I purposely put something that would be not so clear cut, just to, that we have discussions here.
Perfect, thank you. I also saw earlier on there's a question on monopoly as a patent. And I've actually
I've answered that, at least I think, in writing.
Yes, I mean, monopoly.
So yeah, patent will give exclusive rights, but don't forget, the patent is a negative right. it's not because you have a patent you can start selling products
so
with
sorry,
it.
Arthur, the monopoly, I mean, this is an example of Pavlovian reaction. We hear monopoly, we talk about patents, but actually the question was about the game, the monopoly game.
Oh, monopoly game. Okay,
And
okay.
indeed, monopoly, it's not protected by patents, but by rather trademarks.
It
and
was patented in the US. That's usually difference
Yeah.
between the US
Yeah.
system
perhaps,
and
exactly. In
the
the
I
US
mean,
it can be, but in the EPO you
US
cannot
patents.
get a patent on that.
And in the,
Yeah,
in
I
the US,
realized. Thank you.
they also call design patents, which we call registered designs here, I think. I don't know if...
it is a good example of the differences between the European and the US system.
But interestingly, they tried at the beginning, the early days, to get a registered trademark on monopoly, on the name, but it was refused because the term monopoly is a generic term. But then there was a new law passed in the US in the 70s, that was allowed for certain goods, of course, for games and whatever. But very interesting.
Comment on the grace period bit. This is back in my pre-EPO days when I was working in tech transfer. We actually had a case where an academic had published about half of their sort of ideas. So we ended up actually filing a much more limited claim set with the European Patent Office that hadn't been disclosed, and then a larger claim set with the USPTO that had the things that had been published to take advantage of their grace period. So sometimes if an academic has published, you can still get something around it, but you end up obviously with a lot more narrow coverage. So
and experience as an examiner. Once I was examining an invention which seemed absolutely interesting and fine, and within half an hour I found the disclosure of the invention by the inventor. So I was very happy as an examiner because that gave me 1 point and I could increase my productivity with little effort. On the other hand, I was a bit sad because the inventor would have had the right to a monopoly on that invention had he known the rules at the EPO. So he, being an American applicant, inventor, they follow the grace period, and moreover, in some countries it's 1 year. In US is 1 year. In other countries, I think in India and Japan, it's 6 months. So there might be differences. And
it's a pity when you see the paper that's published in time. You see that destroys novelty, and oftentimes the publication has a lot of details too, and it's not much. The patent application will not add too much to that. So it's a pity when that happens. So our role here is to educate them to make sure that they file at the very latest in the same day. Also that they don't put on the internet on a folder that you can access without passwords, because sometimes Google will index it, and then it gets published before the date of filing. It will be also a debate when it was. Can you prove that it was there? But you don't put it online.
It's also showing when a lot of these publications have been obviously through various draft phases within the academics themselves before they.
Yes.
The authors, it's like if they just.
An older version, and that version is in time. The other one is not, but the earlier version is in time. And it was
the advice is also always for inventors to researchers. First of all, contact your TTO as soon as you're finding something you think, I could publish something. Go to your TTO and check with them, or to a patent attorney. Great. Do we have still time to discuss sufficiency, clarity? Tom, you know what? I think we don't have time, but
I think we're getting we're 3 minutes into lunch break already. So there's
in theory, this presentation we would go over further requirements of patent applications that go beyond patentability requirements. But in this case, I prefer to expand on examples to get our novelty and inventive step. In the time I had, I preferred to focus on work out an example. I hope it was interesting. The idea here is to teach you the problem solution approach, which is our language.
Here we have a question on Article 55. And So indeed, if I may, just 2 minutes, Alexander asks, if somebody discloses an invention without consent of the inventor, could such a disclosure be excluded from prior art? Article 55 EPC deals with this situation, unauthorized disclosure. And it's a kind of a grace period in the EPC, a hidden one. So inventors have the right to disclose their invention in specific fairs which are listed and updated every year.
Non-prejudicial disclosures, yes.
And if the disclosure is due to misappropriation, then also it can be
abusive
from
disclosures.
prior art. It's
abusive publications, indeed.
Indeed, it may pose a problem, but theoretically no, but it demands certainly a check of the legal environment of the actual situation. So,
and as far as the Article 55, there are some officially recognized international exhibitions, but in my field, for instance, I never know. Those conferences are not even from my field, or most of them.
No, I have never.
I have never given a waiver on Article 55. No.
Not me neither.
So I never had this case, actually. It's very rare.
But it makes life interesting. I mean, if you come from a technical area, you enter into the IP and you're confronted with different issues. And you look at technical features with the eyes of a lawyer, of an attorney, you say, oh gosh, it is interesting. I mean, I find personally, even after so many years, IP, you're really at the crossroads between technical and legal, and this makes it fascinating. If when at university people would have told me you will be working in patents, I would have said you must be kidding. It's deadly boring. But then you change your mind.
Yeah, it's extremely interesting. Yeah,
but that's not so interesting as to prevent you from having lunch. I think Tom, you should.
Also, Tom is hungry.
Exactly.
Super. So if it's okay, so we'll go for a 45-minute lunch break. So I'm afraid you've got me when you come back. So make sure you've had lots of energy-inducing stuff to eat. So we're starting at 1. So we'll close the Zoom session and then it'll reopen again just before 1. And I'll start talking to you at 1. So have a good lunch of fun and
enjoy your meal. Buon appetito.
Buon appetito.
Outside, they say in German. So.
Non è più official language.
Mahlzeit, Kollegen. Ja, buon appetit.